outside. This is 8 p.m. The sun is still there shining bright. This is the first time I need to wear shades when it's 8 p.m. This is insane, man. This is insane. Like, this takes getting used to.
There have been some unexpected discoveries for 28-year-old Singaporean Jim Ng and his wife Catherine as they take in the sights in suburban Melbourne. But they're not in Australia just for a holiday.
We're gonna see if we like this place.
It looks good, eh? Oh wow, this is like the guest house.
The property that we viewed is a landed property. There are 4 bedrooms, 2 toilets, 2 car porches, 1 front yard, 1 backyard. The rental is probably about 2,000 Singapore dollars, so it's very near the countryside. It's about a 5-kilometer drive to the nearest supermarket and cafe and restaurants.
Jim and his wife Catherine are digital entrepreneurs. We first met them at the start of the year when they shared their 2024 adulting goals with MoneyMind.
We also plan to migrate out of Singapore just to be able to experience life overseas before we have a child.
Jim says he's figured out a way to fund rental housing in Melbourne.
If we were to rent out our 2-bedroom HDB flat, I could get 3,000 Singapore dollars a month. It would definitely be enough to cover the rent in Australia, and I could still profit about $1,000.
It isn't just the cost of housing that Jim finds attractive. He also likes Melbourne's temperate weather and the lower cost of owning a car.
The same Tesla Model 3 that I own in Singapore only costs 60k in Singapore dollars here, whereas I bought it for close to $230,000 in Singapore, which is 4 times the price of what it costs in Australia. So if I were to sell the car in Singapore, I could buy 4 of the same car in Australia.
Jim says Melbourne caters to his ideal lifestyle, but he's finding that different places have different economies.
A very simple plate of noodles or bee-hoon with chicken cost us around 12 to 13 Singapore dollars. Whereas in Singapore, I think the same plate of chicken noodles or chicken bee-hoon would probably be only about $5 or $6 tops.
Food prices aside, Jim has been rethinking the move to Melbourne a few weeks prior to their trip.
We ran into some issue with the pet relocation. It would take us about 8 to 9 months because there's a huge wait list for people who want to move their pets over to Australia. So that definitely was another consideration factor for us. Do we really want to wait 8 to 9 months to live our dream lifestyle when we could live it now? The answer is no.
So Australia is no longer their first choice. They're still thinking of moving, but to a place closer to home.
The cost of moving the pet to Melbourne is 7,000 Singapore dollars. Relocating the pet to Indonesia, it will only cost me like $1,900 to $2,000. So there's a big disparity there. And keep in mind, it's just one way. One of the main concerns was also the fact that Melbourne or Australia as a whole is a lot further, and there will be a 7 hours plane ride from Singapore, whereas somewhere else, like let's say Indonesia, for example, which is one of the other countries that we are considering, is only 45 minutes away. So that definitely did influence our decision.
He and Catherine will fly to Indonesia in March for a recce and plan to relocate by June or July this year. Moving to Indonesia will also open up new business opportunities for the young entrepreneur. Jim is looking to invest up to 150,000 Singapore dollars, or around 112,000 US dollars, in several ventures with friends in Indonesia.
We're trying to hire the first Indonesian team member, and we're going through a couple of interviews to do that. I also got inspired by a couple of friends that have been growing their business that's initially based in Singapore, Indonesia being a huge market that is growing exponentially. When he did about 2.5 million in 8 months, that was an eye-opener for me, and I felt that if somebody could do it, why can't that person be myself?
Jim believes running a business and getting hired help will be cheaper in Jakarta or Medan. He's been learning Bahasa Indonesia to overcome the potential language barrier. But there will be other challenges.
Are we able to say we leave behind all of our friends, all of our possessions, all of our connections that we have formed here, the familiarity of things, and just being in your comfort bubble of where you've been for the past 28, 29 years of our lives? So I think that is the bigger consideration factor, because financially I think it's not that expensive, especially when you're going to another country where the cost of living is obviously a lot lower than Singapore.
For now, Jim is making the most of their 2-week holiday in Australia while setting his sights on the future.
I would definitely consider migrating to Australia only after moving to Indonesia for about 1 to 2 years.